network problem. Friends, we are now talking on biosafety, biosecurity, and biocontainment for healthy society. As we all know, the new era has created an awareness about laboratory facilities, about medical field, and about several other things, along with the risks. And probably when we talk of the biological risks, we have to find out a way out of that. We must now understand the importance of this particular topic is biosafety and biosecurity. Both way, these are going to help us. Now in the corona era, where everybody is afraid of the virus, the disease, the patient, if we are well aware of the biosafety regulations, probably there is no need that we should be afraid of anything. Now, let us see what is biosafety. It is a scientific discipline devoted to the protection of human, animal, plant, and environment from potentially harmful microorganisms, their products, and biological toxins. Biosafety is accomplished through the use of risk assessment and the application of work practices, protective equipment, and exposure control. So this is one of the very essential thing, that you can't have biosafety without the use of risk assessment. So naturally, you have to calculate the risk first, that any biological agent, let it be a bacteria, virus, fungus, or whatever, and whatever is the threat to the human, animal, plant, or environment, we have to calculate how much is the threat, and then we have to resort to suitable remedies. Now, if we talk in general about biosafety, the first and foremost important is personal protective equipment. We have to protect ourselves and we have to protect the host also. The type of personal protective equipment includes gloves, footwear, lab coats, eye and face protection, respirator or positive pressure suits, etc. Why for we use it? It provides a barrier against skin, mucous membrane, or respiratory exposure to infectious agents, and to prevent the spread of contamination. Of course, there are limitations. It does not eliminate the hazard. So if you tell somebody that now I am using mask and I am using gloves and I am using face shield, I am totally protected because the hazard has gone. It has not gone. It is there. Only thing is that I am getting protected from that. So integrity of these PPE may wane with use. So it may tear up, it may got wear and tear problems, and not all gloves created equal. Select best gloves for the task. So always we have to be sure that whatever mask, whatever glove, whatever biosafety PPE we are using, it should be accurately positioned. Now this is another field. We have seen biosafety, biosecurity. Now what is the difference between biosafety and biosecurity? This term originated from a small group of scientists who met in 2001 to discuss how to keep pathogens from crossing national boundaries and aimed to counter terrorist attack involving biological agents and toxins. So biosecurity prevents unauthorized entry into the laboratories, removal, misuse of microbial agents, hazardous agents, removal or misuse of sensitive material, including data, equipment, and computers, disruption of the laboratories, and it may not be intentional all the time, even with the natural disasters, destructive events, terrorist incident, intentional non-reporting of any incidents, or accident. So that is also comes under biosecurity, because if you are not reporting any accident, we don't know what are the consequences of that. Now, biosecurity incident and emergency response. It should include response to intentional, that is threats, deliberate environmental release. Unintentional, it could be accidental release. If I'm carrying a flask and it got fallen down, probably that will be a big accident, and whatever microbes I am carrying maybe spill over all over the area. Natural events, power outages, extreme weather, lab infrastructure failure, your heating, ventilation, and AC. So whatever failures are there, you have to account for those failures, and you have to take precautions that such failures do not occur. Effluent treatment, autoclaves. So there are many autoclave users, and if you are not monitoring those autoclaves, whether the material put inside the autoclave, whether it has been autoclaved or not, it has to be ensured. The notification process for identifying, reporting, and remediating security problems. That is inventory discrepancy. I have 5 vials of a particular virus, and now I'm only seeing 3. So it means that 2 have gone somewhere. Where it has gone, we don't know. So missing infectious substances, toxins, chemicals is also some of the big problems. Equipment failure. Then breach of security, reporting or removal of unauthorized personnel from secured areas. Release of agents, and again, that could be intentional and unintentional. Now, if you compare these two, biosafety and biosecurity, biosafety deals with protecting man, material, and the environment from unintentional exposure to biohazardous materials. So it is unintentional, whereas the same area under biosecurity is theft and intentional misuse of biohazardous material. So that we have to take care that biosecurity deals with police and biosafety is a rule. Now, examples of biosafety is PPE. We must have adequate training and knowledge. We must have safe practices, safe sharp uses, minimizing splashes, hand washing, then biosafety cabinets, autoclaves, disinfectants, medical surveillance, vaccinations, proper transport of material. So all these come under biosafety. Whereas in biosecurity, fences, locked buildings, guards, security cameras, door locks, biometric access, challenging unknown visitors, locked storage units, documented inventories, coded labeling of materials, security risk assessment of personnel, registration and permits, and intentional non-reporting. So this is very clear that whatever we are suspecting as an intentional or unintentional, we have to categorize them into biosafety and biosecurity. If you look at the components of laboratory biosecurity, a physical security, a personal security, material control and accountability, then transport security, and information security. So all these things coming together will form a program management. And therefore, a biosafety and biosecurity requires a full-fledged concept of program management. It is not a single thing that, okay, I have used mask now and I am free. It's not like that. You have to have a physical security, a personal security, a material control and accountability, a transport security, and information security. And therefore, this is a sort of program management. Now we talk of biocontainment, the containment of biological agents to prevent exposure to lab workers and outside environment is the backbone of concept of biosafety. I remember when FAO donated us deep freeze specifically to keep rinderpest virus, just one deep freeze for keeping few vials. They said you should not use this defreeze for any other purpose, only keep it for a particular specimen. So primary containment protects the lab workers and immediate lab environment from exposure to biological agents achieved through GLP and use of safe equipment and PPE. The secondary containment protects the environment outside the lab, provided by a facility design and operational procedures that include physical separation of labs from public access, specially designed ventilation and drainage systems to prevent leakage of biological agents outside the lab, and barrier autoclaves. So all these things we have to specifically design by taking engineering controls, and then only we can say that this is a biocontainment. Now, if we talk of biological hazard, just ask questions. Whenever you are handling any biological material, ask a question: why you need it? What is the material nature of the material? Who will handle it? When you are going to open it? How it is to be processed, and where it is going again. So every question constitutes a typical biological hazard. And unless we know those biological hazards, probably we may not have the risk assessment for that. Who would be a target? A person engaged in the field work. Any worker work carried out by any person while executing his duties. This includes all professional works. So naturally, he could be a target for biosafety breach or biosecurity breach. Now, for the purpose of biosafety, every human being, animal or plant needs biosafety and biosecurity, as they are vulnerable for attack from biological agents in the environment, even without doing a professional job. Examples: eating, drinking, swimming, etc. Now, if I'm a laborer in a laboratory, and if I do not know the risk associated with that particular culture plate, I am washing it, and naturally I am at risk. So I am a target for that, even though I don't know how any concept with biosafety or biosecurity. Now, what are the issues for common man? It is possible that everybody is not a laboratory scientist, everybody is not a veterinarian, everybody is not a medical field person, expert. Why should have a biosafety essential for common man? Some examples are personal contact. You shake hand. Now, under a corona case, it is very much prominent that everybody is required to follow the biosafety regulations. You shake hand, hugging, kissing, touching via inanimate objects like railings, and so many things. You cannot even list them out. Safe water for drinking, safe water for bath, swim, non-drinking slaughterhouses, water sources, and then eating and drinking raw milk, unwashed fruits. Now, during last Nipah outbreak in Kerala 2018, we had a lot of discussions on this particular thing, that eating fruits which are partially eaten by bats, or maybe they may be very sweet, or unwashed things where the saliva of a particular bat might contaminate and might land you in a Nipah case. So that is another area. Vegetables, open street foods. Then unknowingly, we have a pest and insect and rat in our houses, in our laboratories, and they create a lot of problems. Now, plague is there in China and several other countries right now. Probably, if we don't have a proper rat control, we may suffer from plague again. So that is, we have to control pest and insect and rat control. Garbage, waste disposal is another important area. The stray animals, including dogs and cats. Now again, corona is a better example. Then what are the special biosecurity needs? We have to watch for water sources, groundwater, and surface water, both. Then we have to watch for food grains. If something is contaminating your food grain or water, probably whole of the population may get affected. So that is one of the essential things. We must have a guard for a particular thing. Fruits and vegetables, livestock and poultry units, food processing units, food distribution chain or food distribution units, zoo animals and birds. Now, one stark example of corona, that 3 tigers and 2 lions, 5 tigers and 3 lions, total 8 wild animals got infected with corona by a guard who used to go there for cleaning. And it was a pre-symptomatic exposure. So from human to animals, it is going. And naturally, once it goes from humans to animals, probably it may come back from animals to humans also. So wildlife, fruit bats, and insectivorous bats. So both fruit bats are for Nipah, insectivorous bats are for corona. So both way we are probably we have to take a guard against them. Then biological sample transportation. So all the time, the courier systems or sample transportation, we are carrying a lot of samples from all over India to Bhopal. And while carrying a bird, a dead bird, probably we may have, say, some type of breach of biosecurity or biosafety, and we may land in trouble. So we have to have a risk assessment for determination of biocontainment level. Because if we decide that, okay, protect ourselves and to protect environment, if we are having a biocontainment facility, we have to calculate what is the need of that particular biocontainment facility. And for that purpose, we have to calculate a risk. Risk assessment is a critical step in the selection of an appropriate containment level for the microbiological work. You cannot expect somebody to say that, okay, we may have something in future and we are going to establish a laboratory biosafety BSL-3 lab. No, you have to specify what agents are to be handled, why you need to handle them, and what is the necessity of doing all this business. So a detailed local risk assessment should be conducted to determine the containment level of BSL-1, BSL-2, BSL-3 or BSL-4. Now, in addition to the risk group classifications based on risk factors inherent to the organisms, the following factors for lab operation be examined. So, potential for aerosol growth or aerosol generation, quantity, concentration, agent stability in environment for biological decay and other things, type of work proposed, whether it is in vitro, whether it is in vivo, whether it is aerosol studies or whatnot. Then use of recombinant organisms. Nowadays, because we prepare so many newer organisms by using recombinant technology in our laboratories, we have to have that monitoring also. Now, what is the basis for this risk group classification? Depending upon the ability to act as an environmental hazard and the severity of disease caused, the infectious pathogens are classified into risk groups. And there are naturally 4 risk groups, risk group 1, 2, 3, and 4. So pathogenicity of the organism, stability of the organism in the environment, infectious dose required to cause the disease, mode of transmission, host range, availability of effective preventive measures, and availability of effective treatment. So if we don't have last 2, availability of effective preventive measures and availability of effective treatment, then whatever the pathogenicity of the organism would be there, probably we have to consider that while calculating the risk group. So naturally, this is one of the very vital information that is required before we decide that which bacteria or which virus or which pathogen is classified under what risk groups. Classification of risk groups. Risk group 1, low individual and community risk. Any biological agent unlikely to cause disease in healthy workers or animals. So that comes under risk group 1. Risk group 2 is moderate or individual risk, low community risk. Any pathogen that can cause human disease, but under normal circumstances, is unlikely to be a serious hazard to a lab worker, the community, the livestock, or environment. Then only it is considered as a risk group 2. A laboratory exposure rarely causes the infection landing to serious disease. Effective treatment of preventive measures are available, and the risk of spread is limited. So, like a bacteria, Pseudomonas, Salmonella, Escherichia coli, all they come under risk group 2, and therefore we allow the students to handle them while they conduct the practicals. Although they are not trained in biosafety, but because of the low risk, we are allowing them to handle. So naturally, as they grow and as they handle those pathogens, it is expected that side by side, they must be given a training on biosafety. Then there comes a risk group 3, wherein high individual risk, low community risk, any pathogen that usually causes a serious human disease or can result in a serious economic consequence, but not ordinarily spread by casual contact from one individual to another, or that causes disease treatable by antimicrobial or antiparasitic agents. So the examples are Mycobacterium, avian influenza, Brucella, they all come under risk group 3. And risk group 4 is the highest individual risk, high community risk, and we have experience of this risk group 4 viruses, particularly Nipah and Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever. Both are now regular visitors in India, and we have to have very good facilities for training people on biosafety and biosecurity on this particular issue. So any pathogen that usually produces very serious human disease, often untreatable, and may be readily transmitted from one individual to another. So, or from animal to human, or vice versa, directly or indirectly, or by casual contact. So, whatever is a method of transmission, we have to have very much high level of care while dealing with such pathogens. And the risk group 4 has got very limited pathogens, Ebola, Nipah, and CCHF. But those limited pathogens again may create big problems if they enter. And we have seen with Nipah and with Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever as a very serious problem. Now, if we talk of microbes and infections, I am not going much into details, but just brush up those things. There could be human infections, there could be animal infections, and both way, from human to animal and animal to human, it could be zoonotic infections or anthropozoonosis, we call it as. Then bacteria, viruses include prions, fungi, and parasites. Again, ecto and endoparasites. So that is one of the areas where we expect infections, and we have to be alert on those areas. Now, if we talk of progress of infections, we must know what is the source, from where it is coming, what is the atria of infection, what is the root of the infection. Establishing the infection in a host means whatever infection is being established in the host, what is the procedure for that? And elimination of infectious agents through secretions and excretions. So again, that also we must know that if the host is eliminating that infection, but what type of excretion and secretions they are following, that also probably we should be aware of. Then transmission of infectious agents, we have a direct contact, handshake, hug, kiss, sex. Indirect, with fomites or inanimate objects like patient's cloth, excretions, etc. Droplet, again, now because of corona, people are very much interested in this droplet. It is not direct aerial, but it is through large droplets as well as small or micro droplets. And these micro droplets could as equate themselves to aerial transmission many times. Airborne, so particles of viruses and bacteria transmitting through dry air even. Vector-borne, under that category, we have a mechanical transmission as well as biological transmission, as we see in malaria and dengue and chikungunya and several other diseases. The vertical in vivo or uterofetal, so that is another area of transmission from mother to offspring, and zoonotic or anthropozoonotic from animals to man and man to animals. I have added another area, although earlier it was not a part of biosafety, typically biosafety training, but since last 2-3 years, we are experiencing this particular area is hospital-oriented infections. The patient was suffering from something else. He was admitted to the whole hospital for that particular treatment. And instead of getting treated or even in addition to getting treated, when he was released from hospital, discharged from hospital, he got some other infection, which is being carried by him now for a long time. Nosocomial infections are healthcare associated or hospital acquired infections that are neither present nor incubating in patient at the time of admission. So these infections occur worldwide, both in developed and developing countries. And the minimum percentage of nosocomial infections in developed countries is 7%. And they say that in developing countries, it is around 30%. So 10 to 30% they give range, but many times it is higher. Frequently prevalent infections include central line associated bloodstream infections, catheter associated UTIs, surgical site infections, and ventilator associated pneumonia. Because the procedure for sterilization of ventilators and inline system probably may not be watched for or may not be inspected frequently, and there are no provisions up till now made for making them sterilized. So that is one of the area. And during hospitalization, patient is exposed to pathogens through different sources: environment, healthcare staff, and other infected patients. So even the neighboring bed where the patient is kept probably may have some other infection and may transmit that infection to the patient. The hospital waste serves as a potential source of pathogens, and about 20 to 25% of hospital waste is termed as hazardous. And now we are taking care, but still many of the small hospitals do not take care of hospital waste. During 2 to 29 May 2018, there were 23 Nipah virus infection cases identified, including the index case. An index case and 5 cases were not confirmed, but 18 cases were confirmed. Of these 23, 21 died, only 2 cases survived. Now, the history tells us that the Kozhikode district in Kerala had 3 civil hospitals and only 1 was index case which got infection originally. And after his admission to a hospital, and then he was shifted to another hospital, and then some patients were shifted to another hospital, there were 21 deaths out of 23. So naturally, they are all due to nosocomial infections. So hospital-oriented infections sometimes take very serious turn if biosafety and biosecurity is not protected. Nosocomial infections can be controlled by adopting strict isolation protocols in case of highly contagious diseases, disposal of excretions and secretions of the patients in a scientific manner, sterilizations of cloth, bed, utensils, and all items belonging to a patient. Now, natural practice is, if a patient is there, their relatives, they come, they meet him, and very close relatives take the old cloths of the patient to the home. They wash it in a, say, their community washing area, with a family washing area, and everything that is contaminated prior to bringing it to home will contaminate the whole cloths being used in home. Same thing is for bed utensils and other things. It is essential to keep a check on antimicrobial use and its resistance. This is one of the bigger problem now, that a very innocuous type of bacteria like Streptococci, Staphylococci, or E. coli, we got urinary tract infection through catheter, but unfortunately the infectious agent or the bacteria was drug resistant, and the patient had to suffer a lot after getting discharged from the hospital. For that purpose, a continuous education program for common public must be carried out on how to take patients' care and also to remain away from infection. Even after death, we have a tradition that everybody comes and hugs the dead body. Now, if the patient has died of a risk group 3 or 4, probably there is some risk that may transfer the bacteria or the virus from the dead body to the relatives. So we have to take care and we have to educate people. So it is not a question, because there are a lot of sentiments attached to that, and we have to have due care while communicating such views. Then we talk of zoonotic infections. They are occupational, particularly for veterinarians and animal owners. There are now various animal lovers who cannot sleep unless their cat is beside them in their blanket. So naturally, there are risks associated with each of these things. Then we have a very bad shape of slaughterhouse. Everywhere, small slaughterhouses or homemade slaughterhouses or unofficial, unauthorized slaughterhouses. They have plenty of workers whose hands are soaked completely in a blood and in say excretions and secretions of those animals who are being slaughtered. Then there are sailors of the animals, the animal products if they are not monitored properly, and of course there are airborne infections and waterborne infections that we have to take care of every time. Now here, a biosafety need is definitely pertinent while we handle each of these things. During respiratory disease outbreaks, occupational dealing with patients, transmission of tuberculosis, we have to monitor air. And now with the corona, now everybody is afraid of air. So we have full of our nasal area and mouth covered by masks just to ward off that particular infection. Entry into the water. There are leeches in water. There are filariasis, and large area in India suffers from filariasis because of, say, not following biosafety in entering the water. The insect bites, and insect bites are common from malaria to Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever to Zika virus. Animal products which are either raw or uncooked. Animal handling has got a potential risk, and occupational risk, of course, animal owners, vets, paravets, medicos, paramedicos, milkmen, slaughter industry, animal product industries like skin, wool, etc. And research all researchers must have a well-trained biosafety regulation practices, and including wildlife research, because research in laboratory is easy, but wildlife research, people go inside the wild area or the forest area, and there probably they cannot follow the strict biosafety rules, and that creates a problem. So what are the engineering controls? The primary barriers contain the agent at a source, biological safety cabinet, animal caging, specialized lab equipment. Secondary barriers contain the agents within the room facility in case of an agent escape from the primary barriers. So this is a secondary control, and which is most essential, because for primary barriers, there may be some accident. But for secondary barriers, you have to have a full engineering control, building and room construction, HVAC issues, directional airflow, exhaust filtrations, other engineering controls, including solid waste treatment and wastewater treatment. So if you are keeping a tube inside, naturally, you have to have a tube, then biosafety cabinet, then room, and then building. The whole thing is protected, and therefore we can keep those things safe. The other biosafety controls or engineering controls are gasketed blenders. Normally, we don't bother about mixers and centrifuges, homogenizers. The dirt and dust or the microbes, they stick to the rubber liners and homogenizer covers, and probably that are again potential risk. The cotton plugs, filters for flask and shakers, the filtered pipette tips, HEPA and hydrophobic vacuum line filters, plasticware substituted for glassware now, because we are not using glassware nowadays. So it is a disposable item. Gas burners with shield, micro incinerators, and centrifuges need to have interlock, solid cover, safety bucket, 4 rings, etc. Again, for a primary barrier, a personal protection, any aerosol generated within the cabinet is contained and kept away from the researcher. A product protection, air within the workspace of the cabinet has been filtered so that it is virtually free of airborne particles and organisms, thus protecting the work from outside contamination. And environmental protection. It is not the protection of in the environment, it is the protection of environment from the laboratory. So you should be very sure that you are not contaminating environment by any of your actions conducted in the laboratory. So aerosols generated within the unit are removed from the air before the air is discharged. And therefore, we need HEPA filter operated air systems while we are releasing the air. Then secondary barrier is a structure surrounding the primary barrier. It is a facility and engineering controls with rooms and buildings, type of facility with a basic laboratory and containment laboratory. It's a big chapter. It's not possible to cover it within 45-50 minutes. So I am just brushing up those things, and probably you can get those details a little later. Then PP is anything used or worn by a person to minimize the risk of person's health or safety, and includes a wide range of clothing and safety equipment. PP includes gumboots, hand gloves, face shields, goggles, apron, earplugs, powered air pressure respirator, etc. So, face shield to face mask, everything is your PP, dispose it off safely, and in any case, no mouth pipetting. So you have to use bulb or aspirators with that. Then maximum chances of biosecurity risk. Where there are maximum chances, it is theft or intentional misbehavior. Just to trouble the boss or just to trouble the co-worker, many times such intentional misbehaviors, they do occur. And you have to be on watch, monitor for that. Over enthusiastic researcher, that okay, I am immune to everything, I don't get any infection, I will do whatever I want. Over enthusiastic researchers. Non-reporting of accidents, spills and breakages. This is another big area to be looked at. Improper equipment handling, autoclave, deep freezer, centrifuges, disposal of garbage, lab waste, and inadequate pest control. So most of the laboratories do not have a regular pest control programs installed. So naturally, you are handling a precious material and there are ants on the table, probably that will create a problem. What are the remedies? The first and foremost remedy is education. The proper education and rigorous training, then personal control, vigilance observations, possibly through in-house cameras, to make them understand the consequences. So again, that is a part of education training. And what are the areas wherein the points to be noted for field biosafety issues? We have to have risk analysis, we have to have threat analysis, regulatory awareness, emergency response and planning before execution, public awareness, and personal competence, role and responsibility. So everything we have to follow. What's this coming? I don't know. Then it is prevention control. What is prevention and control? We have to take water and food safety. And most important is healthy habits, healthy food. It is not a biosafety as a rule, a biosafety as a culture. And you must adopt the healthy habits and healthy food as a inculcate as a culture and not as a regulation. Personal hygiene, public hygiene, zoonotic disease control programs, safe sex, and vaccines. So all these contribute to prevention and control. There are now a few slides which WHO has released, and there are common questions. Can people wear mask while exercising? And the answer is exercising as a mask may reduce the ability to breathe comfortably. Sweat can make mask become wet and more quickly, which it makes difficult to breathe and promotes the growth of microorganisms. Important preventive measure during exercise is to maintain physical distance of at least 1 meter from others, and you can remove the mask. Then another question is, can shoes spread the COVID-19 virus? The likelihood of COVID-19 being spread on shoes or infecting individuals is very low. However, as a precautionary measures, particularly homes where infants and small children crawl or play on floors, consider leaving your shoes at the entrance of your home. This will help prevent contact with dirt or any waste that could be carried out on the soles of the shoes. There are many questions like alcohol is a good disinfectant, then drinking alcohol, whether it protects you from COVID-19. So drinking alcohol does not protect you against COVID-19 and can be dangerous. The harmful use of alcohol, on the contrary, increases your risk of health problems. What are the rules, common practices? As a biosafety in general and as a biosafety in particular for corona. So this one slide I have added, no crowding at any place, mask, goggles and social distancing is the key, no free roaming, no open eatables, no uncooked food, wash unpeelable fruits thoroughly, soak vegetables in clean water thrice if taken raw, wash vegetables once before cooking, no hugs, no shake hands, wash hands with ordinary soap and ample water frequently. No need to use disinfectant, Dettol, Savlon for a common man. Use only if you handle microbial culture or patients. Avoid removing masks and touching your mouth, nose, eyes on road. And in any case, please do not indulge in self-medication. No self-medication. So I come to an end now. My final comments are, remember, vaccine, even if it is made available, is not a substitute for biosafety. So you have to have a biosafety regulation, biosafety issues, and then you can take vaccine. Safe distancing, mass discipline, and personal cleanliness should be strictly followed. Now, coronavirus is going to stay. Don't be afraid of it, but inculcate habit of using mask, goggles, and personal distancing forever. And take an example of Japan. So you go to Japan, anywhere, almost 60 to 70% of the people use masks, even if there is no disease. And if you don't follow any rule, this is your fate after death. This is actually a photograph of Nipah deaths being disposed of. So all your belongings, dead body and everything, without your relatives, without anybody attending to your, say, last rites, they will have a disposal of dead body. So please be sure that you are not indulged in any of the practice that will breach biosafety and biosecurity issues. Thank you. So my talk is over. Probably you can unmute somebody.
So please close your screen.
Okay.
Screen.